Alright, section 12, pilot valve linkage setting, injector rack and linkage. And then this is the electric motor division engine maintenance manual number 252C for model 567C, engines 3rd edition, January 1957. Alright, section 12, pilot valve linkage section, setting injector rack linkage, description pilot valve. The pilot valve is a device controlling flow of the oil vane motor with the load regulator, electro-hydraulic, pneumatic, hydraulic governors have the pilot valve embodied with the governor housing shown with the partial governor section, figure 12.1. Normal operation of the pilot valve depends on the action of the governor fuel supply with the corrective of the engine. Speed of the pilot valve is balanced with the prevents oil flow with the load regulator. If there is an unbalance of the fuel supply speed setting with the pilot valve, that permits the oil flow with the load with the regulator, so generated load correction may be made with the resumed speed with the fuel balance. However, when the overriding solenoid is energized with the pilot valve, the reserve with the banking load regulator to move minimum field position. Pilot valve linkage. The pilot valve linkage is the same with the electro-hydraulic, pneumatic, hydraulic governor, because if the horizontal floating linkage, figure 12.4 with the vertical side slide linkage, eccentric adjusting clevis holding screw with the connection of the pilot valve plunger and floating linkage. Injector linkage is figure 12.2, because if the mechanic arrangement which permits all injector racks. And then it shows to be positioned simultaneously with the governor fuel control lever, the linkage of the two link control and injector control rods, one which with adjustable the connection fuel lever with the governor injector control shaft with the injector control stand, one for each bank. The center of the length of the cylinder bank and under the cylinder head over the cover of the frame, and each of the cylinder location lever, the dependent of the control shaft, the micrometer adjusting link. Connects the control shaft lever with a bracket lever mounted on each cylinder head. One end of the sail ball end of the injector rack of the governor fuel lever is moved with each of the injector rack is also moved proportionately. This shows your legend, your schematic load regulator and pilot valve linkage, injector linkage. Alright, B, operation pilot valve. The pilot valve with the conjunction load regulator required with each of the cylinders, assume the predetermined load with each of the throttle position limit with each of the load range, regulator range of the action, control of the loading of the main with the generator through the battery field, control of the partial governor section with the pilot valve with the associated parts engine output with the corrective with a certain throttle position, lane with the pilot valve plunger closes. B, C with the pilot valve with the pushing with the position pilot plunger, no oil can flow through the port on the from the load regulator vane motor with position balance position with the pilot valve with the shown figure 12.1 with lubricating oil pressure on with the pressure valve with the between the lands of the plunger and strap with the pilot valve with is balanced. Horsepower demand with the engine with the greater less of the engine is set with the develop with the governor given the throttle position changes will be made with the position with the governor power position is met with the chain with the horsepower demand. So if the throttle position has not been changed with the pilot valve with the plunger will leave the pre-raised for lower with the movement of the power piston with the linkage of the action unbalance of the pilot valve with the oil level as permanent with the flow of the load with the regulator adjust the generator load of the desired engine output with the engine overlay with the power piston will move upward to increase the fuel action used with the raise of the pilot valve plunger opening of the port B with the upper hand while under the pressure can also flow with the port B with the vane with the motor with the load regulator cover the load regulator movement to reduce main generator output increase with electrical resistance of the barrier field circuit with the vane rotate with the push of the oil ahead through the oil inlet port with the C with the pilot valve with the ends of the engine oil sump with the load on the engine is reduced with the power piston the pilot valve plunger move down with the normal position pilot valve plunger closed at both ports B and C with the operation of the pilot valve under load with the engines opposite with the given the under overload with again with adjusting with the generator load permit with the engine assuming the proper load with a certain throttle position with the range of action of the load regulator, the movement of the timing of the vane brush holder load regulator is automatically controlled by orifice slides with the port C with the low port with the pilot valve bushings. Always the regulator must be returned from the port C while the oil regulator leaves through the port B with the oil regulator moving passes through port C. The slide orifice of the pilot valve bushing lower port designated with the provider to define that load regulator movement if the timing of the table A section 11 from the timing of the currently used with the pilot valve bushing. Alright, pilot valve may set with the maximum minimum field starting with the maximum field port C with the opening of the operating pressure with the start with the minimum field with the B with the opening of the pressure with the start with the additional setting with all of the current locomotive and now the modified maximum field start with the modified maximum field start with the pilot valve set for the maximum field but through the action overriding solenoid through the energize the pilot valve position over the minimum field position immediately after de-energizing overriding the solenoid pilot valve with assumed the position of original set maximum field. See overriding solenoid section 11 the provision also made with allow the oil to circulate through the system with The engine idle will keep it warm in an oil system and improve the operation of the mechanism. The pilot valve is set with a minimum fuel position. Unbalanced condition exists with a several throttle position with greater proportion over the movement of the speed. Spring set with a power piston in line with the pilot. Valve plunger to the same balanced position. Maximum field start with a greater movement of the power piston. First throttle position will lift the plunger to balanced position. C. Maintenance setting of the injector rack. Before attempting to set the injector racks, all the racks and linkages should be checked with the binding of the stick with the wear would be effective for the operation of the part with the injector rack with the bolt bank for the operating with the injector control shaft high end lever. To check each of the banks separately with the remove the club that bends over the end of the injector control rod with the bank of the control shaft to be checked if and required with the individual injector rack may be isolated with the control shaft with the checking. Section 10 remedy with the sticking injector is properly reassembled after checking. The injector rack with the 567 the engine starts as follows. The injector of the 567 the engine should be set with the rack length of 1 inch, which with the governor pointer opposite with the 1 inch mark over the governor terminal shaft scale. The U with the governor tailored jack figure 12-4 with the raised tailored until the 1 inch mark on the scale with the opposite with the pointer over the governor do not force the tailored rod excessive may be broken in tension. Racking setting with the gauge with the U with the set of the injector fuel rack. This gauge replaced with the prior used rack gauge set in 8195904. Gauge is made over the body indicator blade multiple left with the pointer handle with the application for the gauge shown figure 12.3 used for the injector fuel rack and for the gauge for the body with the contact lever point while the gauge is the handles hand held against the injector length against for the nut with the turn move of the injector rank with the position of the gauge with the point with the center mark with the indicator of the injector rank of the outer of the injector and 1 inch calibration block and inserted fully within the gauge body with the place for the injector rack with the checker pointer accurately pointer position corrected with the center mark with the calibration block in the gauge. Alright, using 2/7/8 of the inch open end wrench for the hole of the injector micrometer to adjust the nut and lock screw, loosen the lock screw figure 1213. Place injector rack with the setting of the gauge over the injector rack. Hold the gauge firmly again with the injector body. Check with the gauge with the pointer position. If the pointer is an I side gauge, reach the rack is out of far. The micrometer adjusting point nut with the place pointer with the S side with the scale of the brake. Bring rack out of the pointer mark with the scale. Mark up line with the center position. Hold the position tight with the micrometer of the adjusting lock nut. By bringing the pointer to the S side of the scale line lining up pointer of adjusting all the scales of the rack. Ensure the rack backlashes and taken up with the same direction. Set check all of the injectors used. Using in this procedure, note, in the event of the injector rack setting of the gauge is not available for the injector racks, may be set with the position by positioning the governor pointer to 1 inch mark with the terminal shaft scale with adjusting the injector rack with the 1 inch scribe mark on the rack is just visible. The rack gauge, if available, may be used to replace the gauge. Holds as a pointer. Check the use and the 1 inch gauge of the pointer reset as if required. However, the gauge is held with the injector by a magnet. Rack length was set by moving the fuel rack until the gauge pointer it was at center mark of the gauge. Set the setting of the pilot valve linkage before setting of the pilot valve valve of the injector linkage of the injector racks. Engine speed should be properly set with the governor engine speed with scale with the must agree with the engine speed with the idle and the full speed position with the be reset with the remark with agree with the chain with the made with the engine speed setting of any time with the pilot valve should be checked with the power X setting. As the pilot valve scales should be checked with the balance of the position with agree with the actual pilot valve balance with the release the end of the floating link with the engine running with the raise of the floating link with the position with the pilot valve plunger load regulator bushing brush arm does not move between the maximum with the minimum field position with the position pilot valve plunger with the pilot valve scale should indicate zero balance position with the scale does not correspond with the actual balance of the scale that should be relocated remarked and pilot valve disc relocated if it's corrected once pilot valve is properly set it should not be changed directly not be changed to correct engine output until all other conditions investigated. Partial lift of the proper cuff with the low output are engine inoperative injectors insufficient fuel injector timing incorrect speed setting electrical power contactors not energized broken loose connections interlocking may contact pilot valve linkage same with the pneumatic hydraulic and consist of the horizontal adjusting floating link of the vertical slide with the eccentric forward adjusting shown figure 12.4 change location with a movable block dimension A varies from the total of the travel of the pilot valve shows the pointer adjusting nut and the lock nut and scale of the rocker gauge. Or the plunger will change the eccentric raise of the lower with the plunger of the pilot valve is set with the making of the following adjustment of the engine shutdown. Check with the terminal shaft scale of the engine data with the governor power of the piston all the way down with the pointer indicated with 1.96 for the set of the A dimension A floating link of the figure 12.4 with the specific engine speed with the fuel load injector rack length of the table A for the engine speed being set. Dimension A is approximately 45 by 64 inch for the maximum fuel setting of the 16 cylinder 567 C engine has a 96 full 0.96 full load injector rack length, full speed 835 RPMs. Note the maximum fuel starting with a modified maximum fuel start with the overriding solenoid energy over the other started landing modes except for the miles E3, 6, 7, FT, and F2. Position terminal shaft scale and using tailored jack using the pointer at opposite full load rack length and or being set with the governor speed jack position pointer on speed scale set for the engine speed. Then it goes over the engine speeds, the schematic pilot valve linkage with the governor in 12.4. Comparable full loaded injector rack of the 567 engine replaced with the other 567 engine speed at 800 RPMs using the injector 5227852 as follows. Alright, the pointer on the pilot valve scale must be shown with the balance of the E1 and B2 side with the not loosening of the eccentric lock sheave. They're adjusting the eccentric spring in the pilot valve with the plunger scale with the zero balance position relock with the pilot valve must be positioned at zero balance to full load and speed on all engines. Position governor's speed scale with the idle speed of the terminal shaft with the position with the pointer position with a 1.79 pilot valve scale pointer should be indicated with the maximum field start with the minimum field depending on the dimension. A7 with the maximum field start with the dimension given in A2. Note some of the earlier governors at 1.7 the mark the terminal shaft scale should be remarked at 1.79 marking location correction. Pilot valve scale pointer below the maximum minimum field with the mark of the dimension A should be tightened with above the respective mark with the dimension A should be shortened on the correction of the adjusting of the dimension A 1/2 rack required with the return of the full load rack length. Adjusting pilot valve with the pointer 0 balance position with eccentric B 1, 2, and 3 adjusting. Recheck setting of the idle speed with the 1.79 rack length with the further adjusting required with a repeat above the procedure until the pilot valve with the scale pointer indicate with the correctly idle speed with 1.79 0 at the balance full speed full load injector rack length. And this was a reading of your electric. This has been a videotape recordings of the engine maintenance. Your engine maintenance manual number 252C for miles 567C. Engine 3rd edition 1957. The engine maintenance manual electric motor division General Locomotives. Testing.